sponsored by Microsoft. The Vatican, home to St. Peter's Basilica, got its name thousands of years ago, long before becoming the seat of the Catholic Church. It took its name from the hill it stands on. Ancient Romans called it Mons Vaticanus, Vatican Hill, because it was the place where the prophets, known as Vates, delivered their Vaticinia, or oracles. Under the Vatican Hill, there was a marshy land which, like so many areas of the city, was drained by the Romans in order to have a more salubrious site to build and expand the city. In the 1st century, Caligula, one of the first Roman emperors, built a circus in the site primarily used for chariot races. This circus was expanded and further enhanced by the Emperor Nero, who, after the Great Fire of Rome in the year 64, blamed Christians for it and ordered their persecution and their execution in the circus, among them St. Peter the Apostle. Now, since this area was outside the city walls, many Romans used to bury their dead near the circus. This was also the burial place for St. Peter and the other martyrs who were executed in the circus. A Roman graveyard called necropolis typically consisted of straight streets flanked by small monuments and constructions that housed a tomb. Wealthier families built larger, ornate tombs, while the less affluent had simpler graves or niches. Around the 2nd century, the circus began to fall into disuse until it was eventually dismantled, and the necropolis kept growing and developing in most of the area. Over time, St. Peter's gravesite would have become a focal point for Christian worship, and when Emperor Constantine legalized the Christian religion in the 4th century, he built the original Vatican Basilica with its altar on top of St. Peter's tomb. Now we can visit and experience the Basilica and the tomb of St. Peter better than ever before, thanks to a new, sophisticated AI technology that the Vatican is using in collaboration with Microsoft, which allows them to create an extremely detailed digital model of the Basilica. So all the images you're seeing are part of the new exhibit.
Microsoft has invited me to be one of the first to experience this cutting-edge technology exhibition, and it's located on the rooftop of the Basilica behind the dome, and I'm very excited to show you.
So originally, the Basilica is a type of building that the Romans used for legal and commercial purposes. But it was such a large construction that it could gather large amounts of people, and so its architectural type was chosen to be used for Christian celebrations instead of the Roman temple, whose architectural program wouldn't accommodate a congregation inside. Roman temples were designed for housing large statues of gods and performing sacrifices outside, so they often had limited interior space. Also, the Basilica was associated with civic legal activities, and early Christians wanted to establish their faith within the structure of Roman society, without the pagan connotations of Roman temples. The Vatican necropolis was on the slope of the hill, so when the Basilica was built on top of it, they had to flatten the terrain by filling with dirt all the space of the necropolis. The old Basilica was built and stood for over 1,000 years until the 16th century, when Pope Julius II decided to tear it down and build a new church, the St. Peter's Basilica that we see today, which took over 100 years to build. Much of the old basilica was reused in the new one, especially columns and materials, many of which you can now explore closely with a new AI-enhanced experience. Probably the most important thing about the Vatican's collaboration with Microsoft is the accessibility that it will have to people who may not be able to visit the Basilica in person, as they are launching a website where you can now virtually tour the Basilica in great detail, zooming in and closely admiring the materials and the sculptures as well as the inscriptions. I'm walking outside Bernini's colonnade towards the entrance.
We're going through an entrance on the outside of the square where Swiss guards are going to receive us. They gave me this badge, which, policemen and guards sort of treat you with more respect when you have it, so that's great.
This area to the side of the basilica gave me a great opportunity to admire the masterful design of the apsis and experience the intricate detail and great scale of the basilica from the side, as well as appreciating the spot where the obelisk that's in the center of St. Peter's Square was originally located. This little square on the pavement where there's an inscription that reads Sito dell'Obelisco Vaticano fino all'anno 1586, translated as Site of the Vatican Obelisk until the year 1586. But this is not often accessible to most people since this entrance is reserved for the staff of the Vatican. However, in the new virtual site of the Basilica, you can appreciate this spot with great level of detail. This is probably the best way to explore the Basilica next to visiting it in person. Just look at the level of detail I can zoom into inside of the Basilica. You can even explore details that aren't visible from the ground if you visit the church, like the Cattedra Petri or the Glory of Bernini. And the way they achieved this was thanks to a company named Iconem, who took the task of taking over 400,000 photographs of the basilica using cameras, drones, and lasers in order to build this 3D model, which they call a digital twin of the building. Every single detail from inside and outside was captured and replicated in the digital twin, and then enhanced by AI to fill in gaps and enrich details. The tomb of St. Peter remained buried since the necropolis was filled with dirt to build the first basilica until the mid-20th century, when archaeologists started to excavate a part of the necropolis with the purpose of finding if the remains of St. Peter were indeed buried there. Of course, there isn't much that you can excavate because you can damage the foundations of the building, but most of the excavations took place beneath the nave of the basilica, where there is no structure under the ground. So there are 3 layers of construction: the basilica itself, built by several popes throughout the 16th and 17th century, then the grottos which lie beneath the basilica at about the same level that the floor of the old basilica would be, and at the bottom, the necropolis, most of which is still unexcavated. In the grottos, you'll find corridors lined with sarcophagi, housing the tombs of many popes and saints buried within the basilica. The grottos also feature several chapels, some of them adorned with funerary monuments and relics from the old basilica, such as mosaics and inscriptions, along with passageways leading to additional tombs. And beneath the grottos, there is the deepest and most ancient layer, the excavated section of the necropolis. The dimly lit corridors are flanked by well-preserved tombs, some adorned with faded frescoes and carvings. Latin inscriptions and Christian symbols mark the transition from pagan to early Christian burials. The feeling of walking here is similar to walking in the streets of the ancient city of Pompeii. The scale of the basilica is so large that you can fit inside the Statue of Liberty, including its pedestal. So when there are structural failures such as cracks and fissures in the walls, it is very difficult for the human eye to spot them, as there are thousands of square meters in surface. Using AI technology, the digital twin of the basilica allows conservators to spot these structural vulnerabilities in seconds and be able to monitor them. Also, it can spot missing tiles or pieces of the basilica that might be worn off, as centuries have gone by since its construction. For the demonstration of this technology, I entered through the very guts of the building, up to an elevator that took me to the top of the basilica, from where I could get a very close look at Michelangelo's dome and experience the slopes of the roof for the rainwater to drain and other structures on top of the basilica, as well as a stunning view towards the Vatican gardens.
I'm right now here at the roof of St. Peter's Basilica. You can see the dome right there behind me. This is the top of the transept, and all of these spaces, the naves, the transepts, they use them as storage spaces, but they took one of them, they emptied it, they cleaned it, and they remodeled the whole thing so that they could accommodate the exhibition. And it's just great to be here because you get to see the Vatican Gardens behind. You get to see all of these structural elements for how the water goes down, all of these slopes in the roof, the wooden beams and the wooden structure of these roofs. So it's really a privilege to be up here and experience this place as nobody is allowed to. This is the area that they transformed into the exhibition. So you can see again the dome. This is the back side of the basilica. So this is the west side, and you can see, so there is a dome up there, and here I'll show you. This is the exhibition space. It's called Petroseni. It means Peter is here in Greek.
When the necropolis was excavated, a small shrine was found right beneath the altar. They call it the Trophy of Gaius, because it was described by an early Christian writer in the 2nd century called Gaius of Rome. Near this small shrine was found a wall with ancient graffiti made by early pilgrims. Among these, there is one that reads Petroseni, the contracted form of the Greek Petrosenesti. Peter is in here. Even though Latin was the language spoken in Rome, Petroseni was inscribed in Greek because it was the primary language of the early Christian church. The New Testament was written in Greek, and early Christian communities across the Mediterranean often used Greek for religious texts, prayers, and inscriptions. The small shrine has a niche where archaeologists found the bones of a man, aged 60 to 70, wrapped in a purple and gold cloth, a mark of high reverence dated to the 1st century. Traces of soil on the bones suggest that they were originally buried directly in the ground. These are believed to be the bones of St. Peter. The ancient graffiti inscriptions on Peter's tomb can be closely observed in vivid detail through the virtual tour of the basilica, as well as the bones of Peter. So imagine standing here, where the remains of one of the apostles, someone who walked with Jesus, were buried and rediscovered after nearly 2,000 years. As you enter the Petroseni exhibit, the experience begins in a space surrounding the upper part of the apse roof structure. Here, interactive displays and wall projections immerse you in the architectural intricacies of the basilica. Close-up views of mosaics and paintings, all meticulously captured in the building's digital twin, bring these details to life. Digital models illustrate the history and evolution of the basilica, allowing you to explore its architectural story in depth. From this room, you descend to an octagon of the basilica, the space that surrounds one of the smaller domes of the building. This area features massive screen projections that narrate the transformation of St. Peter's humble tomb into the grand basilica we see today, using the digital twin to visualize its architectural progression. As you move through the exhibit, you can examine physical models of the old and new basilicas, and look into windows around the octagon to view different perspectives of the basilica's interior. In some parts of the interior walls, there are architectural drawings made by the workers that constructed these spaces. The staff at the Vatican closed the basilica for me and gave me a private tour in order for me to show you more details. Right above the place where the bones of Peter were found, at the level of the grottos, there is a space known as the Confessio, an ornate chamber with a niche, where there's a medieval mosaic of Jesus with a Latin inscription that reads, Ego sum via veritas et vita, qui credit in me, vivit. It translates to, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Who believes in me will live. And in front of it, there's a small bronze urn that holds the pallia, bands that are given to newly appointed metropolitan archbishops each year. As the bishop puts the band made of wool over his shoulders, it symbolizes the lamb that the shepherd carries on his shoulders. Each year, new pallia are made on the day of Sant'Agnese and stored in the urn. And a few months later, the pallia are blessed by the Pope and presented to the archbishops. You can access to this space of the Confessio through a set of round stairs located behind two bronze doors. The backside of these doors feature two upside-down crosses, which symbolize the way that St. Peter was crucified. Above the Confessio, there is the altar, carved from an enormous Greek marble block that was found in the ancient Forum of Nerva, near the Colosseum. And surmounting the altar, the huge bronze baldacchino made by Gian Lorenzo Bernini, the architect that carried out the construction of most of the interior of the basilica. Naturally, I got invited to the press office of the Holy See to be present at the unveiling of the project with Microsoft executives as well as a cardinal and members of the Fabric of St. Peter that made this possible. They showed the project to the Pope, they explained the technology and described how the digital twin was created.
From a humble tomb hidden beneath layers of history to a basilica of unimaginable scale, St. Peter's story is now more accessible than ever. If you'd like to explore St. Peter's Basilica in stunning detail, I've left a link to the virtual tour below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you very soon in the next episode. Goodbye.